In a galaxy far from Earth, a group of aliens were bored. They had explored many worlds, met countless species, and seen more technology than they could ever imagine. Yet they found themselves tired of the usual routine. They needed something fun, something that would entertain them. After a long meeting, they decided to play a prank on the humans. The idea was simple. They would send an SOS signal to Earth, pretending that their planet was under attack. The message was carefully crafted to make it sound like a desperate plea for help. They thought it would be hilarious to watch the humans rush to their aid, only to find that there was no real threat. They expected the humans to look weak, confused, and out of their element. The aliens laughed as they hit the send button. They were sure it would be a harmless joke. After all, they believed humans were just an unimportant species, barely capable of handling their own problems. How could they possibly fight against an entire fleet of aliens? Back on Earth, the message was received by the Earth Defense Council. The humans had never interacted with the aliens who sent the SOS, so they were unsure of what to make of it. The signal was odd, and it didn't match any known patterns from other species they had encountered. Still, the message was clear. Help. Us, Earth, our world is under attack. At first, the council hesitated. Was it a trick? Was it real? No one could say for sure, but one thing was clear. They couldn't ignore a call for help, no matter how strange it sounded. They knew that Earth had the resources and the fleet to respond, just in case this was a genuine emergency. So after a short discussion, the decision was made. A fleet would be dispatched to investigate. The alien pranksters watched in anticipation. They expected the humans to fall into the trap, just as they had planned. Let's see how they respond. One of the aliens said with a grin. It should be fun. The human fleet was made up of some of the most experienced commanders, all trained for any situation, no matter how unusual. The fleet was led by Captain Jason Turner, a calm and calculating leader known for his quick decisions in battle. Alongside him was Commander Sarah McAllister, brilliant strategist, who could analyze any situation and come up with the perfect plan, as the fleet prepared for the journey to the alien coordinates. Captain Turner briefed his crew. "We don't know what we're walking into," he said, looking around the room. "It could be a trap, but our mission is clear: investigate, assess the situation, and respond accordingly." The fleet set off, traveling through the stars at incredible speeds. As they neared the source of the SOS, the crew grew tense. There were no signs of enemy ships, no signs of life at all. The only thing they could detect was an empty, silent planet, the source of the signal. The alien pranksters, meanwhile, were still waiting. They were confident the humans would arrive, confused and unprepared. They imagined the humans stumbling around, looking for a threat that wasn't there. Maybe they would even send in a few soldiers to search the planet just to find that there was nothing to be afraid of. The aliens were already planning their next joke, but something wasn't right. As the human fleet got closer to the planet, strange things started to happen. The sensors on the human ships began picking up faint readings. There were traces of something that didn't belong. It wasn't a weapon or an army, but it was enough to make Commander McAllister pause. "This is odd," she said as she reviewed the data. "I'm detecting some kind of energy signature coming from the planet's surface. It's not quite natural." "Could be an old distress signal," Captain Turner replied. "But let's be cautious. We'll land a small team to investigate." The team landed on the surface of the planet, prepared for anything. As they stepped out of their ship, they found the landscape strangely quiet. Almost too quiet. There was no sign of the aliens who had sent the SOS, no trace of life at all. The ground was rocky, and the air was thin, but everything seemed normal. Aside from the faint energy readings, the team set up their equipment to search for more signs of activity. But as they moved deeper into the planet's surface, they began to feel like they were being watched. The hairs on the back of their necks stood up. It wasn't just the odd silence, it was the feeling of something being out of place, like they had walked into a trap. The prank was starting to feel a lot less funny. Back on the ship, Captain Turner monitored the team's progress. "Keep your eyes open." "I don't like the way this feels," he muttered. The crew had encountered too many dangerous situations not to trust their instincts. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed across the comms. The team had found something an ancient structure buried beneath the surface of the planet. It wasn't a normal building, it looked more like a hidden fortress, something that had been built long ago. The structure was massive, with strange symbols etched into its walls. It was clear that whatever was inside, it wasn't a simple alien joke. The team sent their findings back to the ship. "There's something here," Commander McAllister reported. "It's not just a prank. This place was built for a purpose. And I don't think we're alone anymore." The humans were no longer just responding to a simple SOS. They had uncovered something far bigger than they expected. And whatever it was, they had a feeling it wasn't just the pranksters who had something to hide. Back on the alien side, the pranksters' laughter began to fade. They had no idea what was coming their way. This part sets the stage for the unfolding adventure, making the readers wonder what will happen next as the humans uncover a greater mystery behind. As Captain Turner and his crew watched the strange structure on the planet's surface, a sense of unease began to settle over the fleet. The team on the ground had found something that didn't belong. The fortress was ancient, unlike anything the humans had ever seen. It wasn't just an abandoned building. It felt like a trap, and the crew knew it. "We need to proceed carefully," Captain Turner said, his voice steady but tense. "There's something here, and I don't think it's just a prank." On the surface, the team set up a perimeter around the mysterious structure. Commander Sarah McAllister, known for her sharp mind and quick thinking, was in charge of the mission. She led the way, her eyes scanning the surroundings, looking for any signs of movement. The silence was deafening, and it only made them more suspicious. "Everyone, stay alert," McAllister said into her. "Come, if there's anything dangerous, we need to be ready." The team slowly made their way toward the entrance of the fortress. It was a massive stone door, covered in ancient carvings that none of them could understand. As they got closer, a soft hum seemed to vibrate in the air, coming from within the structure. It was subtle, but it was enough to make them pause. "What do you think it is?" one of the soldiers asked, his voice low. "I don't know," McAllister replied. "But whatever it is, it's not a simple abandoned ruin." The team reached the door and found a strange, glowing panel next to it. It seemed to respond to their presence, lighting up as they approached. Without thinking, McAllister placed her hand on the panel, and to her surprise, the door began to slowly open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of something old. But there was also something more, something that felt alive. The walls of the hallway glowed faintly, and the further they walked, the more the hums seemed to grow louder. It was as if the fortress itself was reacting to their presence. "Keep your guard up," McAllister ordered, as they moved deeper into the structure. As they walked through the narrow corridors, they found strange symbols etched into the walls, almost like they were warnings. The deeper they went, the more the hum became overwhelming. The air felt charged, and a strange energy seemed to pulse through the stone beneath their feet. "What kind of place is this?" one of the soldiers whispered, his voice filled with wonder. In fear, McAllister didn't have an answer. She had never seen anything like this before. It was as if the structure was not just a building, it was something much more advanced, far beyond anything the humans had ever encountered. But why would the aliens who sent the SOS lead them here? What were they trying to hide? They reached a large chamber at the heart of the fortress. In the center, there was a massive, glowing device that seemed to be the source of the strange hum. It was a sphere, surrounded by intricate machinery that hummed and pulsed with energy. The air around it crackled with power, and the walls of the chamber were lined with more symbols, even older than the ones in the hallways. McAllister stood frozen, her eyes wide. "What is this?" Her question hung in the air, unanswered. As the team moved closer, the device suddenly activated. The hum grew louder, and the sphere at the center began to glow brighter. Then, with a low, vibrating sound, the entire structure seemed to tremble. "What did we do?" one of the soldiers asked, panic creeping into his voice. McAllister took a step back, her mind racing. She didn't know if they had activated something dangerous or if it was merely a part of the structure's normal function. But she did know one thing: this wasn't a joke. Whatever the aliens had planned, It was far more serious than anyone had realized. Suddenly, the cums crackled to life. "Commander McAllister, this is Captain Turner. What's happening down there? We found something." "Strange," McAllister replied, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "It's some kind of ancient device. We don't know what it does, but we're getting strange energy readings. You need to be ready for anything." Captain Turner's voice came through clearly. "Stay alert and don't do anything reckless. We're sending down reinforcements. Just hold your position." Before McAllister could respond, the device in the center of the chamber began to glow even brighter, casting an eerie light across the room. The walls seemed to vibrate, and a deep, rumbling sound echoed through the structure. The floor beneath their feet shook, sending dust and debris falling from the ceiling. "Get out, now," McAllister shouted, her voice filled with panic. The team quickly backed away, trying to retreat toward the entrance. But as they turned, the walls of the corridor seemed to close in. The structure was reacting to their movement, as if it were alive. The glowing symbols along the walls began to pulse. The hum reached a deafening pitch. Just as the team reached the entrance, a massive shockwave erupted from the device, sending them flying backward. The ground cracked beneath them, and the entire fortress seemed to shake. In a matter of seconds, the entire structure began to collapse in on itself. "We need to leave now," McAllister yelled, struggling to regain her footing. With all their strength, the team ran, the ground shaking violently beneath their feet. They made it back to the ship, barely escaping as the fortress collapsed in a cloud of dust and debris. The shockwave from the explosion sent their ship tumbling, but they managed to stabilize it before crashing. "Captain, we're out," McAllister reported breathlessly. "But whatever we just activated, it's dangerous." Captain Turner's voice came through the cum, sounding concerned but composed. "What did you find, Commander?" "We don't know," McAllister said, "but it wasn't a joke. The aliens who sent that SOS, they led us straight into something far more powerful than we can understand." The crew stared out at the now destroyed fortress, wondering what they had just unleashed and what it meant for humanity. This part continues to build suspense and intrigue, leading to the discovery of something far more dangerous than expected, while the humans realize they've stepped into a situation beyond their After the destruction of the mysterious fortress, the human fleet sat at the edge of the planet, unsure of what they had just encountered. The dust from the explosion still lingered in the air, and the team on the ground had barely escaped with their lives. Yet even with the danger behind them, one question remained. What had the aliens who sent the SOS been trying to hide? Back on the ship, Captain Turner paced back and forth in the command room, his mind racing. He was used to being in control of a situation, but this was different. They had found something ancient, something that felt far beyond their understanding, and it was still unclear if the device was a weapon or something else entirely. "Commander McAllister," Captain Turner said, his voice firm. "What exactly did you activate down there? And why did that fortress collapse the way it did?" McAllister, still shaken from her escape, was sitting at her console, staring at the glowing screen in front of her. "We didn't activate it on purpose, Captain," she said, rubbing her temples. "It just happened. We didn't even understand the device until it started to hum, and then everything went wrong." The hum they had heard had been like a warning, but by the time they realized its significance, it was already too late. The explosion had been a reaction to their presence, something they had triggered without meaning to. It was clear now that the fortress wasn't just a hideout for an alien prank, it was a part of something far more dangerous. "We need to know what we're dealing with," Captain Turner said. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to search the rest of the planet. Whatever the aliens were hiding, we'll find it." The crew worked quickly, assembling a team of scientists and engineers to analyze the data from the planet. They scanned the surrounding area for any other hidden structures or signs of activity. But as the hours passed, they found nothing. The planet was quiet again, as if the explosion had erased all traces of life. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the ship, Lieutenant Daniel Grayson, a seasoned officer, was studying the communications logs. He noticed something strange. The SOS message had been sent from a location that wasn't anywhere near the planet they had just visited. The signal had been transmitted from deep within the galaxy, from the heart of enemy territory. "Captain, you need to see this," Grayson called out to Turner, his voice tight with concern. The captain walked over, peering over Grayson's shoulder at the screen. "That's not possible," Turner muttered. The signal they had received was meant to be from a peaceful planet, a place that was supposed to be under attack. But now, Grayson had discovered that the message had been sent from a location controlled by the most feared enemy in the galaxy, the Zarek Dominion. The Zarek were ruthless conquerors. Known for their brutality and advanced technology, their fleet had crushed entire civilizations and their soldiers were feared across the stars. It was impossible that such a powerful force would send an SOS for help. The message was a trick, a lure, designed to draw the humans into a trap. But it had backfired. The Zarek Dominion. "But why would they send a distress signal to us?" Turner asked, trying to make sense of the situation. "And why lead us to that planet? We have to assume that they were trying to trap us," Grayson replied. "But if that's true, then they must have known we would send our fleet. It was a setup from the start." "Then it wasn't just a joke," Turner said. "It's a warning. A warning that we're not ready for what's coming." The crew fell silent as the realization hit them. The Zarek were preparing for war, and the humans had unknowingly walked right into the middle of it. "We need to make a decision," Turner said after a long pause. "Do we continue our search for answers, or do we pull back and regroup? The Zarek are a threat we're not ready to face." McAllister, who had been listening intently from the back of the room, spoke up. "We can't just turn back. We've already triggered something. That fortress, it was more than just a trap. I think it was a warning about what's to come." "I agree," said Grayson. "Whatever it was that we activated, it's part of a bigger plan. The Zarek won't let us off that easily." Turner turned to face his officers. They had all agreed. They couldn't just walk away from this. If the Zarek were truly involved, then humanity had to stand their ground, even if they didn't know what they were facing. "All right," Captain Turner said. "We'll keep searching, but we're going in prepared. If the Zarek are involved, then we need to be ready for anything. I want the fleet in defensive formation. We move out in 2 hours." As the crew scrambled to prepare, McAllister couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far worse than they had expected. They had barely escaped the collapse of the fortress, and now they were headed straight into enemy territory. On the surface of the planet, the remnants of the explosion were still smoldering, but something else was happening. Far beneath the surface, deep within the planet's crust, an ancient machine began to stir. It had been dormant for millennia, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And now, with the activation of the device, the time had come. The Zarek Dominion's true plan was beginning to unfold, and the human fleet was about to become the key to unlocking it. As they prepared for the unknown, they had no idea that the true enemy was already preparing to strike back. This part continues. The stories build up as the humans realize they've triggered something far bigger than they expected. The involvement of the Zarek Dominion adds new layers of danger and mystery, setting up a thrilling conflict for the remaining parts of the human fleet, now fully alert to the potential dangers, prepared for the next step in their investigation. They had uncovered more than they had bargained for. The Zarek Dominion was behind the SOS message, and their own actions had triggered something ancient and dangerous. But no one had expected the confrontation to come so soon. Captain Turner stood at the command deck, his eyes scanning the readouts in front of him. The fleet had been on high alert for the past few hours, but so far they had found no signs of enemy ships. It was almost too quiet. The silence hung over the fleet like a heavy fog, thick with tension. "All ships are in position, Captain," Lieutenant Grayson reported, his voice steady but tinged with nervousness. "We've got full shields and weapons online. Everyone's ready." Turner nodded but didn't speak. He was deep in thought, trying to anticipate what the Zarek would do next. The enemy was known for being ruthless and cunning, but what they hadn't anticipated was that humanity was ready. Earth's fleet may have been smaller, but their training and technology had put them ahead of most other species. "Commander McAllister," Turner called, turning toward her. "Any new intel on the Zarek?" "We've been scanning the nearby systems," McAllister replied. "There's no sign of them yet, but I can't shake the feeling that they're already here. We need to be prepared for an ambush." Turner didn't like the feeling either. He had learned to trust his instincts, and right now, they were telling him to be on guard. "All right, keep the fleet moving forward. We're going to show them that humanity doesn't back down." As the human fleet moved closer to the heart of Zari-controlled space, the tension on board each ship was palpable. The crew went about their tasks with calm determination, but the air was thick with the knowledge that a fight was inevitable. Suddenly, the silence was broken. The ship's sensors began to beep rapidly, alerting the crew to a massive fleet emerging. From the shadows, the Zarek had arrived, and they were closer than anyone had anticipated. "Captain, they're here," Grayson shouted. "Massive fleet on the scanner, and they're moving fast." Turner's mind raced as he processed the information. The Zarek fleet was larger than anything they had encountered before. Their ships were sleek and dark, designed for speed and firepower. The battle ahead would be difficult, but the humans had one advantage. They were ready for the fight. "All ships prepare for battle," Turner ordered, his voice sharp and commanding. "Raise shields, lock weapons, and take defensive positions. Let's show them what Earth can do." The human fleet quickly formed up, with each ship falling into its assigned position. The Zarek fleet came into view, and it was far more terrifying than anything the humans had seen. The dark ships loomed ahead, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The Zarek were known for their advanced weaponry, and the humans knew that they had to act fast to prevent being overwhelmed. "Firing sequence initiated," McAllister said, her voice steady, despite the pressure. "On your command, Captain." "Let's give them a taste of humanity's firepower," Turner said, his voice filled with determination. "Fire at will." Salvo from the human fleet ripped through the silence of space. Beams of energy shot from the human ships, striking the Zarek fleet with incredible precision. The enemy ships retaliated almost immediately, launching their own volleys of deadly missiles and energy blasts. The battle had begun. For the next few minutes, the space around them erupted in chaos. Ships dodged and weaved, firing at each other. In rapid succession, explosions lit up the dark void as the human fleet's weapons clashed with the Zarek's. The sound of battle was almost deafening, even though it was taking place in the cold vacuum of space. On the command deck, Turner's eyes darted from screen to screen, tracking the movements of both fleets. The Zarek were relentless, their ships moving with deadly precision, but the humans were no less determined. Every shot, every maneuver was calculated, a testament to the training and skill of the fleet's commanders. "Zarek ships are pushing forward," Grayson reported. "They're trying to break our formation." Turner clenched his fists. The Zarek were strong, but the human fleet was holding its ground. They weren't going to let the enemy get the upper hand. "Maintain formation," he ordered. "Do not let them break through." The human ships continued to fire, hitting their targets with deadly accuracy. One by one, Zarek ships exploded, sending pieces of debris drifting into space. But the Zarek weren't giving up. They had a seemingly endless number of ships, and they were beginning to surround the human fleet. "Captain, we're getting surrounded," McAllister called out, her voice tinged with urgency. "We need to break through, or we'll be trapped." Turner's mind raced. Dane needed a way out, a way to strike back at the Zarek without getting overwhelmed. He scanned the battlefield, his eyes darting to the smaller, faster ships in the human fleet. There was a way to do this, but it would require precision and timing. "Commander McAllister, order the smaller ships to break through the Zarek lines," Turner said. "We'll create a distraction, give the main fleet a chance to fall back and regroup." McAllister didn't hesitate. She immediately relayed the order. To the smaller ships in the fleet, "All smaller ships break formation and charge toward the Zarek lines. Create as much chaos as you can." The smaller ships in the fleet sped toward the Zarek, darting through the larger enemy vessels with incredible speed. The Zarek, unprepared for this tactic, found themselves caught off guard. The distraction worked. Zarek lines were disrupted, and the main human fleet was able to break free. "Now's our chance," Turner shouted. "All ships fall back and regroup. We're not done yet." The human fleet pulled back, creating distance between themselves and the Zarek. For the first time in the battle, the humans had gained the upper hand. The Zarek were momentarily disoriented, and the humans used that moment to their advantage. But the fight was far from over. The Zarek were not the kind of enemy to give up easily, and the humans knew they would have to face more battles before this war was over. This part shows the beginning of a high-stakes battle, with the human fleet outnumbered but determined to fight back. The tension builds as the humans use their strategy and training to hold their own against the formidable Zarek. The battle raged on in space, each second passing with an intensity that felt like an eternity. The human fleet had fought hard, managing to push back against the Zarek forces. Yet despite their efforts, the Zarek were relentless. The enemies' ships continued to fire, their weapons leaving trails of destruction in their wake. Captain Turner stood on the command deck, his face hard and focused. The Zarek were powerful, but they were not invincible. The human fleet had already shown them that they could hold their ground. But now, with the tide of battle turning against them, the humans had to adapt quickly.
Captain?
Our shields are at 40%, Lieutenant Grayson reported, his voice tight. With concern, we can't hold much longer at this rate. Turner's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The Zarek fleet had grown in number, and their ships were more advanced than anything humanity had ever faced. They had the firepower, but the humans had something else's determination. Commander McAllister, any new strategies? Turner asked, trying to stay calm despite the growing pressure. McAllister was studying the tactical map on her screen, her eyes scanning the movements of the Zarek ships. The Zarek are closing in on our left flank, she said, her voice low but confident. If we don't act quickly, we'll be surrounded, but there's a weakness in their formation. If we can exploit it, we might be able to turn this around. Turner nodded, understanding her point. We'll need to act fast, get the smaller ships to break through again, create chaos, anything to disrupt their lines. McAllister gave a sharp nod, relaying the order to the fleet. The smaller ships, fast and agile, once again darted forward, weaving through the Zarek fleet with precision. The Zarek, taken by surprise, struggled to adjust to the sudden shift in strategy. For a moment, the humans had the upper hand.
Else.
Our chance, Turner called. All ships, focus fire on the Zarek flagship. The human fleet aimed their weapons at the heart of the Zarek force, the massive flagship that led the charge. If they could take it down, they might break the enemies. Morale. The flagship was heavily armored, but the concentrated firepower of the human fleet was something the Zarek had underestimated. The first barrage hit its target, causing a massive explosion on the Zarek ship. The flagship's shields flickered, but they held. Turner's eyes narrowed. The Zarek were still fighting back, but the humans had started to tear away at their defenses. "Keep firing," McAllister shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "We've got them on the ropes, don't let up." As the human fleet concentrated its fire on the flagship, the smaller ships continued to disrupt the Zarek formation, hitting their flanks with quick, sharp strikes. The Zarek were beginning to fall apart, their once unified fleet starting to fracture under the pressure. Turner watched as the enemy ships began to retreat, their coordinated attacks turning into scattered attempts to save their own vessels. The human fleet had done it. They had found the weakness in the Zarek's formation and exploited it. Just as the humans began to believe they were winning, something unexpected happened. The Zarek flagship released a wave of energy, a pulse so strong it sent a shockwave through space. The pulse disabled the human fleet's shields, causing several ships to lose power and go dark. "Captain," Grayson called, his voice filled with alarm. "Our shields are down. We're vulnerable." Turner clenched his jaw. This wasn't over yet. The Zarek were trying to use their desperation as a weapon, but the humans had faced challenges like this before. "All ships regroup," Turner ordered. "We can still do this. Hold your positions and prepare for another attack." The human fleet quickly adjusted, their ships forming tight defensive groups. They were weakened, but not beaten. The Zarek, on the other hand, had begun to realize that their once unstoppable force was now struggling to maintain control. The humans had proven that they were not so easily defeated. "Commander McAllister," Turner said, his voice steady but filled with determination, "prepare to launch a counterattack. We're going to break through their lines once and for all. McAllister's fingers flew across her console. We're ready, Captain. The fleet is standing by. The human ships, though battered, charged forward with renewed purpose. The Zark flagship, weakened from the constant barrage, was now isolated from the rest of the fleet. The human fleet moved in, their weapons locked on target. They had only one goal now: to finish what they had started. Fire at will, Turner shouted. The human fleet unleashed everything they had. Missiles, laser blasts, and energy weapons poured into the Zark flagship. The enemy ship rocked under the force of the attack, its shields flickering and failing. Zark were losing their hold on the battlefield. With one final decisive shot, the human fleet took down the flagship. It exploded in a brilliant flash, sending shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. Zark ships, now leaderless and disorganized, began to retreat. Their once mighty fleet was falling apart. We've done it, Grayson said, his voice filled with relief. Turner didn't smile. Not yet. We still have to make sure they don't come back. The Zark fleet, though broken, wasn't completely destroyed. There were still stragglers trying to escape, and Turner knew they couldn't let them regroup. The human fleet began pursuing the retreating ships, ensuring that the Zark would have no chance to regroup or retaliate. After several hours of intense pursuit, the last of the Zark ships were either destroyed or forced to flee into deep space, leaving the human fleet victorious. As the smoke cleared and the human fleet regrouped, Turner finally allowed himself a moment of relief. They had won. The Zarek Dominion had been beaten back, and humanity had proven that they were not a force to be underestimated. We did it, McAllister said quietly, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Turner nodded, yes. But this is just the beginning. Zarek won't forget what happened here. We'll need to be ready for whatever comes next. The human fleet had turned the tide of battle, but the war was far from over. The Zarek Dominion would not stay down for long, and the humans knew that they would need to remain vigilant. For now, however, they had earned a hard-fought victory, a victory that would echo across the galaxy. This part highlights a turning point in the battle where the human fleet, against all odds, manages to outmaneuver and defeat the Zarek forces. The tide of the battle shifts, giving the humans a crucial victory, but the final victory is still uncertain, setting up further challenges in the future. After the battle, the human fleet limped back to a safe zone, their ships battered but victorious. The Zarek fleet had been broken and their flagship destroyed, but the cost of the victory was evident. The damage to the ships was significant, and the crew, though relieved, was exhausted. The battle had been fierce. No one could predict what would come next. Captain Turner sat at the command desk, his fingers drumming lightly on the surface. The war was far from over. Despite their victory, the Zarek Dominion would not give up easily, and even though they had struck a powerful blow, humanity's position in this war was still uncertain. Captain, Grayson called from the operations station. We've received a transmission from Earth. They're asking for an update on the battle. Turner sighed and rubbed his face. Patch it through, Lieutenant. The communication screen flickered to life, and Admiral Richards appeared on the screen. Stern face was filled with concern. Captain Turner, we've been tracking the situation. What's the status of the Zarek fleet? We've pushed them back, Admiral, Turner said. Their flagship has been destroyed, and their fleet is in disarray. But we can't let our guard down. There are still pockets of resistance out there, and we're not out of the woods yet. Admiral Richards nodded. Understood. We'll begin mobilizing reinforcements. Keep us informed.
Captain.
We need to understand what's really going on here. The Zarek didn't just send a distress signal for nothing. They were trying to lure you into a trap. There's something bigger at play here. I agree, Admiral Turner replied. We've only scratched the surface. We need to find out what the Zarek were hiding and why they went to such lengths to deceive us. Keep your fleet on high alert. We'll send more intel soon. Earth scientists are already working on the data you collected from the battlefield. Admiral Richards said before the screen flickered out. Turner leaned back in his chair, staring at the now blank screen. The battle was a victory, but the true war was just beginning. There were still many unanswered questions. Why had the Zarek sent the false SOS? What had they been hiding? And why had they tried so desperately to lead the humans into a trap? On the bridge, Commander McAllister joined Turner. She could tell from the look on his face that he was deep in thought. "Captain," she said, "we've analyzed the data from the battle. There's something strange in the Zarek communications. It's like they were expecting us, but not in the way we thought." Turner raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "We intercepted a signal just before the battle ended." "It wasn't meant for us. It was meant for someone else," McAllister explained. "It's encrypted, but the transmission had coordinates, and they weren't sending it to another Zarek fleet. They were sending it somewhere else entirely." "Turner's?" Curiosity piqued. "To whom?" "We're not sure yet," McAllister said, "but we've traced the coordinates. It's deep within Zuri-controlled space, far beyond where we expected. We think they were calling for help, or possibly for reinforcements." "Reinforcements," Turner repeated, his mind working fast. "But why? They were in the middle of an invasion. Why would they need help?" "That's the big question," McAllister replied. "It could mean that they have allies we haven't encountered yet. Or maybe they were running from something, though we need to find out more." Turner stood up, the weight of their situation pressing down on him. "Prepare the fleet. We're not letting the Zarek regroup. Not after what they did." The crew worked quickly to prepare the fleet for the next phase of their mission. The Zurich had been forced to retreat, but their allies or whatever was waiting for them still posed a threat. The humans could not afford to take any chances. As the fleet moved toward the mysterious coordinates, Turner's mind was filled with questions. What had the Zarek been hiding? Why had they needed help? And who were they calling? Hours later, the fleet arrived at the designated location. The space around them was quiet, too quiet. The Zarek had abandoned this part of their territory, leaving no signs of their presence. But something wasn't right. The silence felt unnatural. "All ships maintain full alert," Turner ordered. "Let's scan the area for any signs of activity." The crew began scanning the space around them, looking for any sign of the Zarek or whatever they had been hiding. Then suddenly, the sensors lit up. "Captain, we've found something," Grayson said, his voice tense. "It's not Zarika, at least not like anything we've seen before." The screen flickered as the image of a massive, unknown structure appeared. It was unlike anything the humans had encountered. The structure was enormous, shaped like a fortress, but far more advanced than anything the Zarek had ever used. "A ship," McAllister said, her eyes widening. "But not a Zarek ship. This is something else entirely." Turner's heart raced. "What is it?" "We're not sure," McAllister said, "but it's massive. It's definitely not Zarek technology." The truth was finally beginning to surface. The Zarek had not been the only players in this game. Whatever this massive ship was, it was a clear sign that the humans were facing something far bigger and more dangerous than they could have imagined. "Prepare to investigate," Turner said. "We're going aboard. Whatever it is, we need to understand it before the Zarek or anyone else can use it against us." The human fleet moved closer to the massive unknown ship, ready to face whatever secrets it held. The true nature of the Zarek's distress signal was becoming clearer with every passing moment. The enemy had been hiding something, and now the humans were about to uncover